Okay, everyone, welcome to this week's Talk with Doc. So glad to have everyone here. It's my honor to have back again with us Sara Clime, a parent, ministry leader, speaker, master of many things. We're excited to have her today. We are talking on a very important topic that whether you're a parent or whether you're a ministry leader, this is going to apply to everyone, but it's basically advocacy in everyday situations. So something we can all learn from and something that's going to be so important. So Sara, with that, welcome. Why don't you take a minute and share about yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Thanks again for having me. And my name is Sara Clime. I am all of the things that Doc had said. And I also have a podcast with two other special needs moms. And I am a wife of, he knows exactly. He's the more romantic one of the couple, 24 years. And we have two boys. One, our oldest Connor is in college and he is actually studying to be either ministry or counselor, something along those lines. He's still trying to figure that out. And our youngest TJ is 17. He just finished his sophomore year of high school and he is our child with special needs. So TJ has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's an aggressive, progressive, terminal form of muscular dystrophy. It affects every muscle in the body. And we got his diagnosis in 2012 when he was almost 8 years old. So it's just been a continuous lesson in trying to figure out life since then.
That's right. Right. Well, we're super glad to have you with us today. And you bring so much valuable information. As you know, you're coming from both sides as being a ministry leader and then being a parent as well, and advocacy. I know advocacy is really, you're passionate about that. That's something very close to your heart. And it's something that obviously as an organization for SOAR, we're very passionate about that as well. And I think, we all need to learn how we can be better advocates for our children, for our individuals that we serve. And I think a lot of times we miss out on opportunities on how we can be an advocate. We don't even think about it. And so I think That's what today is all about, just how we can be that advocate in everyday situations. So with that, let me just kind of kick it off to you. What are your thoughts and where do you want to start us off with? Where do you want to go?
Well, whenever I first received my son's diagnosis and you hear, you have to advocate for your child, my mind originally went to speaking at, going to local or state officials or, like Capitol Hill and, having to know all the things about policies and laws. And that's where my mind went. And I don't know about everybody else, but it just seemed like I'm not an advocate. I don't know all of the things. But what I found out very quickly is that to be an advocate for your child, you have everything you already need. You are the expert. You know all the things that you need to know about your child. And you don't have to have three-piece suit up on Capitol Hill. You don't need any of that. To be an advocate is just to know what's best for your child and to explain it to other people and to make sure that the way that I see it is whenever I'm at the store, whenever I'm at school, wherever I am at church, explaining our lives in a very simple way to other people to where they understand this is my son. He does have special needs. He does have, issues that typical children don't have. However, this is who he is and he's wonderful. And I think the biggest part of advocacy, in my opinion, is showing people all of the magnificent parts about this life. It is hard. And I'm, definitely would never say otherwise or take away from that. But if we're constantly talking about the woes or the hard things, that's what people start to see. And so for me to advocate for my child, I want people to know just how awesome he is. And if I'm constantly talking about the medicine or the insurance and, the appeals and everything that we have to do, not that that's not important and not that other people don't need to know that, but they also need to know the great parts. And so both in my life and as a ministry leader, one of the things that we ask parents first and foremost, whenever they're signing their child up for a ministry, is what makes your child awesome? We want to know what makes them awesome. And,
right.
We know, especially these parents, we don't really get that. We get the phone calls. Well, they did this in class, or they're not doing this, or they're not meeting this expectation, or they're not, we get all of the different medical and educational diagnoses, and we don't usually hear they're awesome because. And so I think as an advocate in everyday situations, that's what we go into. I want people to know how awesome he is. And also where he struggles. It's a give and take.
Right. And I'll jump on real quick with that awesome point. And I'll give that shout out to every ministry leader that's out there that might be listening to this. That's the very first variant of that. That's the very first question I ask every brand new parent I ever see. And my question is, tell me something wonderful about your child. It's the same thing.
Well, we got it from you.
Yeah.
And
it's all because so many times, parents are so used to saying all the negative things, but we all know there are so many amazing and awesome things about our kids that we need to focus on that first. As we come into this whole talk today, and one thing I want to challenge every parent listening, one of my key words in life is the word perspective. We can choose if we have a good day or a bad day based on that perspective. We can have bad things happen, but we can choose to have the perspective of focusing on all the negativity from that and, oh, woe was me, or we can focus on how we can learn from that, or how we can get better, or find another positive that might be going on. And so many times we get focused on the wrong things. So just making sure we change our perspective. That's one of the best ways we can be an advocate for our child, is teaching them how to be able to find a good perspective and not always be so negative. But I love that, just every day going around, be able to fight for our kids and show them that they are amazing.
Right. And I think too, we are our children's voices so often. My child's verbal, but he doesn't know how to communicate certain things so it's up to me to help him communicate that. And I constantly remind myself. So I always, whenever he was younger, I thought, if I become a victim to Duchenne, if I become a victim to his diagnosis, he stands no chance of becoming a victim as well. And I didn't want him to be a victim of it. This is part of his life, and it stinks at times. I mean, it just flat out stinks. But that's not the sum part of who he is. That's not the sum part of who I am. And so I think that is just the fundamental part of advocacy. And I think people just, people, myself, even now, we complicate it. And really advocating for your child is just really letting people know he is amazing. She is so fabulous, and this is why. And as mom and dad, we have that covered. We know. So we have the hardest part already covered. It's just a matter of finding how to communicate that in your style, in your situation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So, maybe for the mom or dad that's out there, they may be sitting there saying, Sara, I'm swamped. Life, and we know it, life is insane. I'm a parent. I can barely keep my nose above water. There's no way I can be an advocate. And it's what you said, thinking I have to go fight Capitol Hill. That is an advocate. That's not the advocate that our children need from us as a parent. So can we unpack a little bit more on just how we can be an advocate, whether it be fighting for our kids in the IEP meeting, or, making sure our church is welcoming to our family and able to accept them and talk to them. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Sure. I think for me, going in and knowing that they don't know what they don't know. We all have that. I'm sure I've said some things that are insensitive to other people. I just don't know their situation. So I didn't know any better. And if people are accusatory or defensive, I automatically become defensive and I start to shut down. So I go into that thinking they don't know what they don't know. And just because they're the education expert does not mean that they're the expert with the education for my child. And so going in there with that, the confidence first, and then going in knowing it is a team setting. And I always go in and, just like with education, what I'll do is I'll say, can you explain? I mean, how many times with education, you're in an IEP meeting and they're throwing out acronyms? It's always acronym after acronym. And you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Can you, it's okay to say that. That's part of advocacy. So it's not really a matter of, you don't have to go in and be like, oh my gosh, okay, so what are all the acronyms? I need to study them. I need to memorize them. I need to understand that. Part of advocating is when you're sitting in that meeting being like, I have no idea. I even had to look up what IEP meant. When somebody asked me first, well, do you have an IEP? What are you talking about? And then they told me individualized education plan. And I come from 9 generations of teachers. I just didn't know. And it's okay not to know. So that's one thing that I would say in a situation like that, you don't have to know. It's okay to say, I don't know, can you tell me? Can you unpack that for me? Can you tell me what is it that you're talking about? And so, going in with confidence doesn't mean that you have to know all the things. Just going in with confidence, knowing I'm going to do what I can for my child, and being willing to ask questions, being willing to push back a little bit too. I mean, just because you're in a team setting, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything everybody says as well. Just saying, okay, so here's, like, for example, there was something that a teacher thought that would be best for my son last year. And we're in the IEP meeting. And for me, I thought it was kind of a ludicrous request because I'm like, well, if you knew my child at all, and I thought, well, wait a minute, she's not been in a class with him before, because once you get to high school, they just don't know.
Right.
So I backed up a little bit and I said, let me explain his diagnosis a little bit more because it is really confusing. And so I explained that to her and said, this is why I don't feel what you're suggesting will work. I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a great idea for other children. It's kind of how you approach it as well. So
absolutely,
going in with the assumption that they're not out to get you usually is a wonderful starting point. And I think they're going to be a lot more receptive. And so it's not really extra time. It's not extra research. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the educational expert. You're the mom expert. That is your expertise. And so going in and just saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've done it plenty of times. And can you just let me know? So that's where I would say, and just even church, our church, they don't know what they don't know. So some of the things, like they'll throw an event and I'll say, well, how are we supposed to get into that event? And they'll be like, oh my gosh, we didn't even think about it. Just a couple of weeks ago, they said, we would love for your son to come to Sunday night, the high school small group. I said, okay, well, where is it at? Well, it's in so-and-so's house. And I said, is it accessible? Oh yeah. And I kind of waited and I said, so there's no stairs whatsoever into his home because my child's physically disabled. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And so to kind of help them not to panic about it as well. That's part of advocacy, I think, too, is if you're constantly defensive or reactionary or accusatory, they're going to shut down and they're going to be like, well, they don't want to be a part of it, or, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to her again because she's going to make such a big deal out of it, or she's going to accuse me. So we just talked it through and we ended up finding a ramp, and I'm going to tote that ramp and we're going to get him in the house. And he's like, well, maybe we'll just change it to church. They're not doing it to be cruel. And I think that's part of advocacy. They want to include your child. They don't know how. And that's part of your job as the advocate for your child, is to teach them in a positive and giving way, how to help you with your child. Because I think most people want to know. They do. They want to know, there's a couple people who just don't, and that's okay. And they don't need to be a part of your life. But for the most part, people want to help. They just don't know how. And so, yeah, that would be my first advice.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And the thing I want to just echo, especially on the teachers and the IEP and that whole team, You know, so many parents I talk to end up with a confrontational, relationship. Realize everyone's on the same team and trying to get the best and the most out of your child. And if you go into it realizing that they're not trying to be mean, they're not trying to, do X, Y, and Z, just take a step back and really listen to hear what they have to say. Now, I'll be the first to say, just like you did, they don't always have the right thing. And that's your job to stand up and fight and state what you think. But just like you shared, we have to do it in a polite manner. And, we just have to be respectful in everything that we do. That's what we want to teach our kids. And we need to show that as well as we move through things. But it's a relationship, and having that talk back and forth. I love what you said. Ask those questions. I'll transfer that one other place, in the doctor's office. I'll tell you from the doctor here. I've had both sides where a parent will ask me a question about everything I'm saying. I don't get upset about it. It's fine. I want to make sure they understand. And I've also had the parent who won't ask a single question. And then at the end of them, I'm looking at them, I'm like, do you understand what I just said? Or I'll ask them, can you just repeat everything? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, please ask the questions. Again, that's your part with advocating. And many times, parents most of the time don't have a problem asking a doctor questions to try to explain things. I don't know why it's different for the teachers. It's the same thing. But, for some reason we feel, oh, I can't ask a teacher a question. Baloney, they're on the same team. We're all trying to work together for our kids.
Absolutely.
And let me talk now real quick. Let's go to the family. Let's say they're in a church and your church is doing great. But let's say we've got a family who's in a church that really, like you said, don't know what they don't know. And they're not sure how they can even welcome a family with special needs or disabilities into the church. And they think they're doing a good job, but they're just clueless about it. Let me throw out one of the best ways you can be an advocate. And any ministry leader that's listening, this is what I want to challenge you to be the best advocate. The best way to get change to happen is to get senior leadership on board. The best way to get senior leadership on board is to expose them to it. What's the best way to do that? Invite the senior pastor and his family over to dinner and break bread together and have your child at the table. And I'm not joking here. Pray that your child has an absolutely horrid time and has meltdowns or whatever. And
please let them see the real child.
Exactly. Let them see the real child. And what it's all about. Don't try to hide it and cover it up. It's important that senior leadership sees what life is like, because they have no idea what's like. And it will be eye-opening to them. And then during that meal, you share from your heart. You realize, you know what, Pastor? It's actually pretty hard for us to come to church because, I think we're the only family at your church that your children's ministry has asked that we as parents take care of our own child in the children's ministry. None of the other parents do that. We are spiritually drained and we need our tank filled, but we can't come to church because we just can't keep giving to our child who we've already done 24/7 for the previous 6 days. And now you're asking us to do another hour when we're desperately needing that break. It'll be a mind-blowing thing. That's a great way to advocate. And it's a simple thing that you can start, and that's a way to make change. And then I'll tell you right now, if the senior leadership goes, well, what can we do? How can we do it? If you don't know, you call me. You call us at SOAR, and we'll come in and we'll help. You can ask Sara. We've helped them, and that's what our specialty is. But that's the first way you can start, by being an advocate at your church for your child to help them out. Ministry leaders, that's how, if you're trying to get things done, open the eyes of senior leadership by getting, them exposed to it, because most of the time they really don't know what's going on there, and we need to do it. But we've got to stand up for our kids. and we got to do what we want to do, and realize that's not real hard. You can do it. You don't have to be a good cook, and heck, if you really want, just go ahead, order in there. But it's just breaking bread together and having those conversations, letting them have real life experience with it. So that's a real low hanging fruit that you can do to be an advocate for your entire family. Because sometimes with this, it's not just being an advocate for your child, it's being an advocate for yourself, for your marriage, for the rest of your family. And we so often forget that we focus so much of our effort on our child with special needs that we forget our spouse. We forget our other kids. Well, we've got to find time that we can advocate for them and help them. Siblings, as you and I both know, they don't have a normal life. No. So, we've got to be able to jump in and fight and advocate for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Senior leadership, they want to help. And it all goes back to that none of us know what we don't know. And a lot of times it's just showing, just letting them come over, hang out for a few hours. Usually your life they'll leave being like, oh my word, I had no idea. Exactly. And, but that ministry leaders, senior leadership, their entire reason for being in the positions that they are to bring people to Jesus, all people to Jesus. And when you go and you say, my son is all people, we are all people, but we can't even get in the door. And here's why. And I just want to reiterate what you said too, is I've been a ministry leader. I taught Sunday school for years, and my son was diagnosed, and co-director Leslie, her daughter was born around the same time my son was diagnosed, and we had already been immersed in the church, and they were there for us. We didn't have to fight to get anybody on board. They still just didn't know. It's like, okay, we're going to build a ramp. We're going to build a ramp. We're going to build a ramp. And then we would go on Sunday morning, early, and something would be blocking the ramp. And it's just a matter of, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's whatever, but not going like, why do you guys block the ramp? And, it's like, hey, did you guys know, can we get somebody to check these ramps before other kids come in? We knew our church was accepting, but we have to train ourselves and others to make that accommodation. And your church, that's what they want. They want to do that. They want to get more people in that door. And a lot of people don't even realize how hard it is for us to get in the door. Or once we're in the door, to stay. So, yeah. But yes, and then if you do have any questions, call Doc, because you sat down with us for hours, and we're like, okay, and here's what we did. We implemented exactly what you said, and it's been a game changer for our church. And there's even senior leadership now that are like, we had an Easter service outdoors at a high school stadium next door to us. And beforehand, they're like, okay, so here's what we're planning. Will this work? We're like, no, that won't work. And they said, well, we can't change it because here, but we came to a compromise and we figured out different systems that normally wouldn't have been in place. And is it perfect? No, but it works. And we went into it knowing we were a team. And so whether it's church or school or anybody, even family. I had family that at the beginning, I still have some family that asked me, so is he getting better? Like, he's terminal and there's no cure. No, he's not getting better, but not taking that personal, just realizing that advocacy it's an ongoing thing. And I would also add one more thing for the advocacy side of this, because if you're anything like me and you're sitting there listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, but I'm not patient all the time. I know I'm going to lose my mind occasionally, and that's okay. You're not perfect. And so there's going to be times where I'll leave a grocery store and I have left a perfectly, it's like God handed me this advocating situation where I could have done so much good, and I'd had a bad day. The grocery cart wheel was loppy. My son had a meltdown in the produce section and everybody was staring, and I just wasn't in an advocacy mode. Give yourself some grace. And I think that goes with advocacy as well. Is it doesn't have to be every single moment of your life advocating. God will provide that. And if you mess up, it's okay. Maybe the words weren't meant to be spoken at that certain time. So give yourself some grace. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll just kind of piggyback a little bit on that. One thing, there's one saying that I think just comes straight from the pit of hell. Sorry. And that saying is, God will only give you what you can handle. And I'm sorry, no, that's not the truth. Yeah. I firmly believe God gives us more than we can handle. And he does it on purpose. And here's why. He doesn't want us to handle it. He wants us to focus on what we can handle, what we actually have control of. And anything else we don't have control over, he says, give it back to me. Lay it at my feet and I'll take care of it. And it's honestly just an everyday challenge for us. And especially as parents of individuals with special needs and disabilities, as ministry leaders in disability or special needs ministry, there are a lot of challenges. And many times we are just absolutely overwhelmed. But how many times do we drive ourselves crazy trying to figure out how to do something we have absolutely no control over? And we get nowhere with it. But if we just step back and we actually go and work on what we do have control over, i.e., can we make a ramp to get up the steps? I can control that. I can't control that they chose to be at that house, but I can control how we can get into it. You can release, though, some of the other things that might be driving you crazy, that you don't have control. And when you give that to God, he will work through it and he will take it. And your own mental health, I'll tell you right now, gets so much better. And then you truly can advocate. So that's one way you can take care of yourself, advocate. And one way of advocating in everyday situations is advocating for yourself. And
absolutely.
That's it there. Because we have to advocate for ourselves before we can ever advocate for our child. And too many times as parents, we sacrifice ourselves to be able to take care of our kids. And I've been there, I lived there. But we got to remember self-care and how important that is. And that's part of advocating.
Yeah. Our children are God's children, and we know that we've been given a special privilege to watch them and to take care of them, protect them. We're also God's children, and he cares for us as much as he does our own children. So yeah, it's hard to do that, especially when you're so exhausted, but it's so important to do that. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Real quick, and I should have said this at the top of the thing, but as we're talking, if anyone has any questions, if you're on Facebook Live, go ahead, put them in the chat. We'll take them and talk about that. If you're on Zoom with us, you can put them into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll pick those up as well. So we want to make sure we can get your questions if you have anything there with that, and we'll get there for you. So don't hesitate to throw out any question at any time. We're happy to help you through that.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point too earlier about that that he absolutely will give you more than you can handle. And one of the best ways that I advocate for my child is to show him that I don't know all the answers, that I can't do everything, and that there are situations that might not be. We had, and I'll just give an example. We had one particular instance at a grocery store that somebody said something that was pretty rude. And we had another one that wasn't rude, but I think my child's like physically disabled. He was in a wheelchair at the time that had lights on it. And this little child came up. And so this was not the rude comment, but we've been in both situations where it's been rude, blatantly rude, and then not intended to be. And this one, not intended to be, the child said, "What's wrong with his legs, mommy?" And the mom, of course, just kind of panicked. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, don't do that. That's rude. We don't." And I just kind of knelt down and I said, "Can I talk to your son for a moment?" Because that was such a smart observation that he just made.
Yeah.
And she kind of looked at me and I said, and it's okay. And so I just got down on his level, on the child's level. She's like, yeah, absolutely. So I just got down on the child's level and I said, and it's a lot easier advocating to another 3-year-old, to a 3-year-old than it is to a 30-year-old, just saying. Yeah, but sorry, my dog's barking in the background, if you can hear that. It's my house. It's crazy all the time. But I got down on his level and I just said, you are so smart. You realize that his legs don't look like yours. And so I just said, his muscles are sick and his wheelchair, those are his legs. And I just kind of taught him a couple things, I said, they're just kind of his legs. So like, if you ever see somebody in a wheelchair, it's okay to, they're just like you. You don't want to touch the wheelchair. It's kind of like you don't want strangers touching your legs. So just try not to touch the wheelchair. And he talked to me the entire time we were in that, just asking questions after questions. And my son, then I would have my son answer some of them, even though he doesn't like making eye contact. He doesn't like talking. He doesn't like strangers. But I would ask my son certain questions so he could join the conversation in any way that he could. And when we left, the mom, before, she was in front of us and she checked out. And before she left, she came back and she was just tearing. And she's like, I'm sorry and thank you. And I said, well, you have nothing to be sorry for and you're welcome, and she was like, she didn't realize that what she was doing was telling her son, don't look at him, don't talk to him, don't even acknowledge that he exists, because what she was doing is trying to tell him not to be rude, but unintentionally telling him that my son shouldn't be looked at or, talked about. And that was just one instance. I didn't change the world. But I possibly changed the interaction for the next person. And so I would just, those are the little moments that don't be afraid. In kindness, I was like advocating in kindness. That's just, it really is the bottom line of just, if you're in their shoes, give them the benefit of the doubt and just try to explain things in a kind way. And that's going to change.
Yeah.
So much.
And I'll go ahead and share an example I've got along that line. That's just a little bit different. I can't even tell you the number of times, and mine's on the rude side. I can't tell you the number of times I've been out in public with my son, Mark, when he had an autistic meltdown. I'd have complete strangers come up to me and tell me that I'm not just a bad parent, but I'm a horrible parent. Because, as we know, frequently the face of autism is that of a neurotypical child. Or he's had times in his meltdowns where he started self-harming. So I'd have to put him in a protective hold to protect him. I was doing it correctly in a safe manner where he wasn't being harmed. He was safe, but I was protecting him. And I'd have police officers come up and threaten to arrest me, threaten to tase me or mace me because of what's going on. And it's all because of a lack of education and ignorance is really what it is. And again, it comes back to my word again, perspective. You'll see my word come up a lot. I could have gone in those situations and just been, I'm sorry, pissed off and mad to get out. And first time it happened, I was really mad. But then I chose, you know what? I just like you did. I need to use this as an advocacy moment. And they're saying this because they don't know. So I need to go ahead and teach. And the next time I had a lady come up and tell me what a horrible parent I was, I sat there and said, well, thank you very much. But do you realize my son has autism? And this is an autistic meltdown. It's not a behavior. And if you would like to learn more about autism, I'm happy to tell you. Or if you'd like to help me with my son as he's having this meltdown and his brain can't handle it right now, I'd love for your assistance. And the face always just changes with that. And it's amazing how, being authentic and real in those situations, not coming back with spite and trying to be harmful back to them, really can make a difference.
It really can, yeah.
And same thing when I shared that with a police officer as he's threatening, he's got his hand on his taser, and I'm going, actually, I'd love the assistance. My son has an autistic meltdown, and he's actually harming himself, and I'm getting worn out. Can I show you what to do, and you can help me and take over? And he's like, I go, this is autism. It's not harming him. He's banging his head. I need to help him.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh. And then it's still, I hope next time you see something like, And it's whenever I do a training now, and whoever hears this, I hope you hear this right now. If you're ever out in public and you see especially an elementary age or teenage child individual who is misbehaving and really acting up, that is not misbehavior. Today, that is autism. Autism is 1 out of every 54 kids, and it is prevalent everywhere. And we've got to know that. So come up and say, hey, can I help you? Looks like you got your hands full. And if you don't need it, say, thank you so much, I've got it. But what a difference that makes than doing that. I've actually have seen that, but and Tom just shared on here just how our authenticity can really make a ripple effect, and it really does. And that it is enormous. It's something we have to be mindful of. But that is advocating. We don't think about it, and we think, oh, I don't want. I'm going to be embarrassed for saying something. That's advocating for your child, and it's advocating for every other child out there, because it all comes back to a lack of education and understanding. And we just, especially as a country, need to do a much better job. And I've got my brother Joseph is watching right now from Kenya, Africa. We're working with him in Africa, but I just had a conversation with him this morning. We're helping them do a father's special needs respite coming up in 2 weeks. And he's sharing stories on especially in foreign countries, and we're working in Belize and several other places where parents of children with special needs are so embarrassed by it, or think that that they'll tie their kids to trees while they go to work, or they'll dig a hole, in 6 feet deep and throw their child in the hole so no one can see them and go to work and hide their kids. This is everyday situation. So realize what we have to be thankful for, and we need to stand up and educate. And then we need to be able to help go to other parts of the world and show how we can help them. And that's why we're partnering with Hub of Hope in Kenya and helping them see and be able to show these dads and these moms that you have nothing to be ashamed of, because your child is fearfully and wonderfully made, created in the image and likeness of God. They're created on purpose and for a purpose. There's nothing wrong with them. No. And most of the time I'll shout it to the rooftop, we're the ones who are really disabled, because every one of my friends who's got a disability, they see life through these amazing glasses because they see people for who they are, not for what they look like. We are the ones who are messed up. We see the outside and make our judgments, and we've got to stop that. And so that's part of our education. That's part of our advocacy as parents as we move forward, whether it be at school or at the store or at church or in the doctor's office. That's our role as a parent. That's our role as a ministry leader. We've got to stand up and advocate in those everyday situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. And there's times too where you don't feel like advocating, and you don't feel like talking. You just like, I just want to go buy some milk. Like, I just wanted to go in and go do this. I don't want it to turn into a big thing. I would say in those instances, there are some times where it's okay to just walk away. I have cards, for business cards made, and you can get them at really cheap cost. And mine has a picture of my son on the front, and it says, "You've just encountered somebody with Duchenne." And before he was physically disabled, we would get those stares. And now that I have a child that's in a wheelchair, it's a completely different type of reaction, because nobody's going to belittle the mom of the child in the wheelchair. Before he became non-ambulatory, it was a different story. He'd have a meltdown, and it was the stares and the rude comments. And I just wasn't always prepared for him at the time, or I just didn't feel like I was going to handle it with grace. So I'd made these business cards, and it just says, "Thank you for your interest. You just encountered somebody with Duchenne." And I hand it to him, and it has my son's Facebook page. It has a couple of websites of other Duchenne organizations, and it just gives it to him. And sometimes I just hand it to him. And then I always look at my son and just say, there's been times where I've walked out and I've said, that person was so rude. I don't think that I could have been nice to them. That's why I didn't speak up, but let's pray for them. And so I will sit in the car with my son and pray for those people. And that teaches him, I am going to stand up for him. Sometimes it's not with words, sometimes it's through prayer that brings him closer to God. That's part of my advocacy for my child too, is to show him
Absolutely.
We're not meant to handle everything. Every situation isn't. I had someone tell me that I must have done something wrong, because she was like, I just must be more blessed than you. That was her exact words, because her child wasn't disabled. And I knew I wasn't going to handle it well. I knew. I was like, there are no nice words that are going to come out of my mouth at the moment. And I was like, God might as well just be like, sister, you need to keep your mouth closed. So I handed that person a card, and I walked off to the car, and I told my son what she said was absolutely wrong. I didn't think I could be nice to her, but I want to pray for her that her mind is changed and that she reads that card. I want her to read that card. Yeah. And so we prayed that she would read the card and that her heart would be changed. And sometimes that's advocacy. It doesn't look the same for every single person, and you don't have to go in guns blazing all the time. And I think, again, it's advocacy with kindness. Those are usually, like you said, the gentleman who said that it's a ripple effect, and it is. It might not have changed that reaction for my child, and that's unfortunate, but I pray that it changes the reaction for the next child that they encounter. Right. You know, that maybe that next child they encounter, they're not going to get that rude comment or that rude stare. And if for no other reason, they just don't want a mom talking to them, that's okay too. They're just not going to say it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I've got an email that actually came in with a question. So her question is, she basically, just summing it up here, is dealing with the IEP, and she just feels that she's at complete odds with the teachers, and that they won't listen to anything that she says. And just like you said, she feels like she just needs to give up, but feels like she can't. So what would you tell a mom in this situation who's got a third grader who has a pretty significant IEP, it sounds like, who she doesn't agree with anything on the plan and refuses to sign the plan for the teachers, but as a result, because of what she's perceiving as attitudes, seems to be button heads with everyone?
I've had situations where I've butted heads with one particular person on an IEP. And what I've done is I've requested another meeting with the whole IEP team, all the teachers, administration. And what I did is I actually spoke to that person I was butting heads with first. And I said, I know you don't want to butt heads with me. I don't want to butt heads with you. I just think there's a miscommunication. Can we get together and talk? And I would like, maybe it's best if we have a group. Maybe I'm not seeing it from your point of view, or maybe I can bring some documents or I can explain why that might not work or why I might not think that works. But I think I usually tell people, I want to see you in person, because I think a lot of times texting and emails and even phone calls, a lot is lost in translation, and a lot can be said that they're not going. Things are going to be said differently to your face than they're going to be said over email. And in that particular situation, I would go to that person first and say, I want to resolve this. We're both here for for this child, and we both have the same end goal in mind. And can we get the team involved, and let's come to a solution? And things change when you ask for a face-to-face meeting and you want other people involved. Things will change. And if you come at it like, I never go above that person without addressing that person first. I've had to go around them before, but I always go to them first and say, here's what I think would help. And if they blow me off, then I go to the person above them, but I don't ever do that. I don't bypass them without being very direct to them first. And I'll say there are times where I've been very direct and I have been, like strong. And I use that in quotes because it's not always, but I haven't broken down in tears, and I'm very proud of myself. But I do later. And then there's times where I go into meetings and I just break down and cry, and that's okay for them to see that. So that's another thing too, is that it's okay for you to call these meetings and to go in and just say, I am lost. I do not feel this is best for my child. And if you cry, you cry. If but to ask for that face-to-face, because I I think in our society right now, there's so much done online. There's so much, and especially right now, might not be the best time, but whenever you can meet one-on-one. Last year, we asked for an in-person, and I said, we can meet outside. We can sit 6 feet apart if we need to, but I think that we need to meet in person, or we need to meet over Zoom. And things change when you're face to face with somebody. The dynamic changes. So that would be my that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't agree more with the whole crying form. Especially dads, listen up, you there, and dads, I encourage you to be a part of the IEPs. Schedule an IEP when you can be there and be a part of it. One of the early IEPs for my son, we were butting heads. We had the administration, we had everyone there. They brought one of their big PhDs in and telling us that we were going to fail. We just couldn't do it. I even hired an advocate to be there with us to help us. Mm-hmm. And she turned to me and said, Doc, you're about to lose. Share whatever on your heart. And I did. I shared why I thought we needed what we needed and just advocating for my son. I did it in a very polite way, but I was passionate about it. And I broke down. I started crying. And I'll tell you right now, when you've got a room full of women and the dad starts to cry, they all start crying. And they stopped and said, okay, we'll give you 2-month trial. It took not even 2 weeks for them to come back to me and say, Doc, we're sorry. You were right. We were wrong. He will never go back to that. He will be in this autistic classroom moving forward. We did not realize he needed as much as he does. You know what your child really needs. But at the same time, I'm going to share another opposite side, and I'm going to give this shout out to ministry leaders and share with you how important it is for you to advocate for your individuals in your ministry and how that can change something. So one thing I train everyone, and Sarah's heard me say this, train your buddies who are the one-to-one buddies, that when the parents come, they need to share something positive that happened. It is so vitally important. And one of my most favorite examples of that, I actually had a buddy who got sick during the service, had to send her home. So I jumped in, I was there for the final 10 minutes. Well, the parents came and I'm like, oh snap, I got to come up with something positive to say. I haven't been here the whole time. And the first thing that popped in my head, I said, hey, Johnny did a great job. He did a great job playing with the other kids. I'm going, oh my gosh, Doc, that was such a lame statement. It was true. I didn't lie about it. It was there. And Mom, I'm never going to forget it. Mom said, he did what? I said, he played and interacted with the other kids. And she broke down and started sobbing. And she goes, Doc, I've been fighting with my school in the IEP for over a month now because they are trying to get me to sign off that he's interacting with others. And I will not sign off because I've never seen it. But if you're telling me you just saw it, I need to open my eyes more and be more willing to look and listen. And over the next couple of days, she started witnessing at home where she started looking back and saw it actually had been happening. She just was so bullheaded about it. She wasn't going to see it and missed it. So that one, what I thought was a stupid statement, as a ministry leader, as a buddy to a mom, made a difference that actually helped her advocate and heal things up with the school. So that's the power as well of a ministry leader or as a buddy being able to help your family.
Absolutely.
And let's see.
As far as the education too, I mean, I completely agree with the ministry leaders because we've had so many times where we've interacted with parents and it's just been such a blessing for us and for our buddies as well. As far as advocating for your child in an IEP meeting when you're butting heads as well, I think, again, going in knowing that they just might not know. And I loved what you said is just, okay, we'll give it a shot. And sometimes it's not, I've even said, I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right. but I feel that this is what's best for him because, and I think sometimes as parents, we feel, and I'm saying me too, is I feel I shouldn't have to explain why I think that this is best for my child. I know my child. And if you would just listen, unfortunately, our world doesn't work that way. Sometimes we have to explain and we have to do that and we have to teach. And it is a matter of, okay, not discounting the other person, because I've had some teachers say some things that I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Have you met him? Like, they're just, to me, very obvious. But keeping in mind too, that your child is with them for maybe a brief period of the time, and they have how many other children with different diagnoses, and they also are state mandated, they're federal mandated, they have their hands tied in certain situations. So going in there again with that team camaraderie and that face-to-face of, I want to work this out. I want to make sure it works for all parties, because really, ultimately, my child is who we're serving. Going in with that certain situation. And like you said, just noticing those small things about your child. They might not notice those, and you might not notice what they do. I have had teachers that have said, or facilitators that have said, oh my gosh, no, your child is, just this last year, he was sick. And I said, I just think, is he getting bullied? Is he not communicating? Is he just he must not like school. I had made this whole thing up in my mind that he was being bullied, that he was lonely, nobody liked him. And I had teacher after teacher after teacher. They're like, oh no, he's the life. We can't get him to stop talking. I'm like, are you kidding me? So they see things that are different than you see. So again, going in with not blaming, but working with them, but also knowing what's best for your child. It's a very hard road to handle, but like you said, you hired an advocate, and sometimes that's necessary. And sometimes that makes them listen too, is to hire that advocate.
Exactly. Well, we are coming up on top of the hour here. We could go on quite a bit longer with everything, but let me just give a couple of announcements of things coming up, and then we'll come back, and I'll let you, Sara, have a kind of a parting shot, if you would, of what you'd like to leave everyone with that. But we've got a lot of different things going on with SOAR. I want to make sure everyone's aware of. First off, our next Talk with Doc will be next week, and especially call out to all ministry leaders who are out there. We are going to have a disability ministry or special needs ministry leader panel on, and our whole panel discussion will be what to do for summer ministry in your disability ministries. And so we'll be talking through that and working through that. So we encourage you to sign up for that. Registration will be going up later today, tomorrow for that. Next week, you can sign up either through Facebook or through our website at soarspecialneeds.org. Would love to have you attend that and give us, if you've got any questions, if any ideas, go ahead and send those to us ahead of time. You can email me anytime with that. Also, we have our next Wonderfully Made Family VIP Talk coming up. It'll be on Tuesday, June the 8th. Peggy Ployhar will be talking, and her talk is on biblical encouragement for the special needs parent. It's going to be phenomenal, guys. I've already seen a bit of it, and I'm super excited about it. It'll be at noon on Tuesday, and then there'll be a Q&A on Thursday at 4 p.m. You can sign up for both at Wonderfully Made KC, the initials KC.com, wonderfullymadekc.com for that. Would love to have you there to hear that. Our next virtual respite is coming up on Tuesday. It'll be for our teens and adults, and get ready. We are going to infinity and beyond. We are doing a Toy Story theme. And we're going to be having all kinds of games and crafts. We're going to make a craft of Buzz Lightyear. It's going to be a blast. Dress up as your favorite character. You can register for that. It's from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Register for that at soarspecialneeds.org. Great. Any ministry leader out there, share that with your families. it's a great low-hanging fruit that we'd love to partner with you on that, and would love to have you. Also, we've got if you live in the greater Kansas City area, we have our next in-person respite. And we'd love to have you be a part of that. It'll be June 18th and 19th in Overland Park. We still have space for participants, but we also need volunteers. So go there. We invite you to come, sign up and everything at soarspecialneeds.org. Our SOAR camp is July the 19th through the 23rd. We need volunteers. Come help us out with that. We've got over 100 campers for the week. It's going to be amazing. We're so excited to be in person. Whether you can do a half day, full day, we want you. You don't have to serve with special needs. We've got, games, food, crafts, everything. You name it, we can take it. We'd love to have you. And then lastly, our virtual camp is July the 26th to 30th. And ministry leaders, we want to partner with you. If you're trying to look for a program in the summer, this is a great way where you can have your entire ministry be a part of this, and we can help out with that, with everything. So we'd love to be able to help you through all that. So real quick before we do the parting shot, we've got another question that came in. I just want to make sure we touch on that before we go. And if we go a couple minutes over, that's okay. But the question is, having a situation where paid parents have aged out, like they're older, they're elderly, 80-ish range, and they're trying to take care of their adult child, and basically they've done everything all their life to do that, but now they don't understand what to do, and they think they're doing more harm than good now. And they've got a daughter who actually died giving birth, and the son has severe CP. So trying to figure all that out. How can a parent who's elderly, a grandparent in this kind of situation, be able to be an advocate or get help through that?
I would first, this is another thing where I would, I really would stress for ministry leaders to pay attention to this as well, because I think enlisting the help of your church, enlisting the help of a special needs ministry to help you with these things, to advocate, things change so much. And so even whenever I started my son's journey 10 years ago, things have changed so much on so many things, medically, educationally, whatever. Again, find those resources. If you're not good at being online, find somebody who is, accepting that help from somebody to help you to research it, to look for those answers, and knowing that you might not know, but somebody out there does. So there's somebody out there that knows and that will help, and enlisting help from online resources, either your church or finding somebody else's church. Our church didn't know, we didn't know. So we found Doc, and it was just a matter of scouring Facebook, and we finally found, Google is a remarkable thing. And it's such a hard position to be in, to be elderly and to be caring for an adult child, that understanding that knowing that you need help puts you in a better position than most people in your position, because a lot of people think I shouldn't need the help, or I shouldn't need to have to do this. Yeah, you do. You do need that help. I mean, I need help. And so really enlisting the help of either your church or somebody else. There's somebody out there that wants to help you, and be persistent. Just keep trying to find that help. And help usually comes in the weirdest, just in the strangest places. You could be going for, like you were talking about, your respite night. You could be like, okay, well, let's just do this. And then all of a sudden you've made connections. And so I've had problem solved by going to certain, outings with other moms, and just building that connection. So I would just say to reach out and try to build those connections. There's a lot of people, email me. I might not have all the answers, but I can definitely try to help you find somebody. And there's so many people. And that's the wonderful thing about the special needs world, is especially when you get to special needs parents who are advocates, who are speakers, who are writers, bloggers, podcasters. We're definitely not in it in the special needs world for notoriety. There's just not going to be a lot of fame and fortune that comes from this. But it's from an innate calling that we were put here for a purpose and we need each other. And that's where I would start.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. And one of the best things is, just like you said, be willing to talk to others and asking for help. Mm-hmm. Some of the best advocating you can ever do is asking for help, no matter what situation you're in. And, just being willing to talk to others, talk to other parents who are, special needs parents. They get it. They live it. They understand it. They can maybe direct you to some resources and help. Talk to some organizations that work, whether it be SOAR or some other organizations that may have some great resources, maybe where you live. And we're talking about CP here. There's the Cerebral Palsy Association. Talk with them, see if they've got some resources and some ideas. So there's a lot of great things. There are also some residential programs that you can find and learn great things about. And there's even some new ones that are out there where individuals can actually live in people's homes. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but anyways, those are things that some organizations are able to offer. So there's a bunch of different things there. Yeah. But the bottom line, is being willing to talk about it and ask, and you never know the connections people have to be able to help and do that. It's amazing. And this is an amazing community that frequently will lock arms and help, and they want to help one another out. They've walked it and seen it, and they know when they need the help that others will be there for them. So they want to help themselves. Yeah. So with that, Sara, parting shot that you want to make sure we leave everyone with today.
I would say just to know that I actually have I have a practice that I always tell my moms and dads that they need to tell themselves going into an IEP meeting or to a doctor's office or anything, that you need to build yourself up, is just to say, I am TJ's strongest and most knowledgeable advocate. I know exactly what TJ needs, and I have exactly what it takes to advocate for him. And I do that every time I go in somewhere. And it just reminding yourself that you are exactly what your child needs, and you have exactly what they need, and you know exactly what to do for them. Just build your confidence, knowing, just like that mom who is butting heads with that IEP meeting. There's a reason why you're butting heads with them. And it could be that you need to bend on something. It could be most likely that they do, but there's a reason why that's there, and to lean into that and just to acknowledge that you are the expert. And I think confidence going in, when you're confident about something, you're less likely to be defensive. You're less likely to blow up. You're less likely to blow things out of proportion, because I'm it. I have this. I got this, and I know what my child needs. It really sets the stage for success for you, for your child, for everybody that's in on whatever you're doing. So that would be my strongest. And just to pray, make sure your child sees your struggles too. Sometimes, like I said, some of the best advocating I've done for my child is not with words to other people, but with words to him. Just, that was really mean. Mommy just wasn't, I'm just in a really bad mood, and advocating for your child's spiritual well-being as well.
Right.
It's a whole package.
I think the important there to show is that we never outgrow being able to advocate for our child. We can always advocate, no matter what age there is. Right. Even when our kids are bigger than us, there's always going to be things. But it's just being willing and take that step, and doing it with a smile sometimes,
Mhm.
and so much more can happen when you're trying to be positive.
Mhm.
So you know, it's great things there with that. But I personally think you can always advocate for your child, and it's going to change as we go through life, and you know, situations will always be different. But you know, we always advocate, and I'll pick again on that prayer. It's one of the things I always say: if we're not praying daily for our kids, who is? And so that's one of the greatest ways we can advocate for our child. And the simplest way we can always be an advocate for our child till our dying day is
Mhm.
praying for our kids. And we're advocating to God for them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best gifts we can give our kids, and letting them see us pray for them and with them, like you said, I think is invaluable.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. But everyone, you know, our time's up. Sara, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank
It's been a
you.
great talk. And I hope everyone will join us again next week for our next talk with Doc. And hope you all have a great day. Come, soar with us.